The golden egg: nutritional value, bioactivities, and emerging benefits for human health. Sophie Réhault-Godbert, Nicolas Guyot, Yves. Nutrients 2019, 684. Eggs are a purpose-built life support capsule. They pack macro and micronutrients in the right proportions to carry a chick from a single cell to hatching. That same balance, plus high digestibility and affordability, makes eggs a standout basic food for humans. For years, though, public guidance tried to curb egg intake to reduce cardiovascular risk. The research picture now. Most experimental, clinical, and epidemiologic studies do not find a link between egg cholesterol and higher plasma total cholesterol. Eggs remain a high-quality option for adults, older adults, and children, and they also house a large, still underexplored set of bioactive compounds with potential roles in disease prevention or care. This review lays out 1. Core nutritional traits of chicken eggs, 2. The growing evidence on egg bioactives, and 3. Factors that shift egg composition, including a cross-species comparison. Introduction. Back in 1968, the American Heart Association told people to keep it to fewer than 3 whole eggs per week, assuming dietary cholesterol equals blood cholesterol equals more CVD. That advice hit the industry and nudged diets away from an inexpensive, nutrient-dense food. By 1995, U.S. efforts converged to unify dietary guidance and fund in vitro and in vivo work to reevaluate eggs. Half a century of research later, typical egg intake is not associated with increased health risk, and eggs are worth including for their dense nutrients and multiple bioactivities. Recent studies point to benefits for physically active people and show egg cholesterol is poorly absorbed, so eating eggs does not significantly raise blood total cholesterol. Also notable, egg consumers, especially infants 6 to 24 months, tend to eat less added and total sugar, likely tied to egg satiety effect. Overall, eggs can support health across the lifespan, with a caveat. People with diabetes, hypercholesterolemia, or hypertension should still be cautious with dietary cholesterol. A second issue is egg allergy. It's a common infant allergy, tied 1.8 to 2% under age 5. The main allergenic proteins are concentrated in the egg white: ovalbumin, lysozyme, ovomucoid, ovotransferrin, though some yolk proteins are implicated. About 50% of affected children outgrow the hypersensitivity by age 3. In most, the prevalence declines with age, and the allergy resolves by school age. Nutritionally, eggs deliver essential lipids, proteins, vitamins, minerals, and trace elements at about 140 kcal per 100 grams, with wide culinary use and a low price point. They're identified as the lowest cost animal source of protein, vitamin A, iron, vitamin B12, riboflavin, and choline, and the second lowest cost source of zinc and calcium. Beyond the balanced nutrients for infants and adults, eggs contain a myriad of biologically active components distributed across yolk, white, vitelline membrane, and shell membranes. Shell membranes are edible but usually not consumed because they adhere tightly to the shell. Global consumption spans roughly 62 eggs a year capita in India to 358 in Mexico, and averages are even lower in many African countries, 36. Commercial table eggs are unfertilized and come from about 3 billion hens bred specifically for human consumption. Egg components are highly digestible, but a small fraction of protein isn't absorbed, especially when eggs are eaten raw. Heating denatures structures, making them easier for digestive enzymes to hydrolyze. Even so, assimilation remains incomplete. Cooked egg white proteins reach 91 to 94% digestibility. Importantly, some major white proteins, notably the protease inhibitor ovomucoid and ovalbumin, resist heat, which matters because egg proteins and their limited digestion peptides show bioactivities with potential value for human health. In vitro work has demonstrated antimicrobial, antioxidant, and anti-cancer properties among these peptides. Many authors highlight the substantial role of protein-derived peptides in the gut as part of the first line of immune defense, in immune regulation, and in normal physiological function. Number 2, egg nutrients. Egg proteins are split roughly evenly between white and yolk, while lipids, vitamins, and minerals sit mostly in the yolk. Water is the dominant component, and eggs contain no fiber. Across national databases, minor constituents can differ, but the major nutrient profile is very stable and mostly tracks the white yolk ratio. In a fresh raw whole egg, the proximate composition is 76.1% water, 12.6% protein, 9.5% fat, 0.7% carbohydrate, and 1.1% ash. 2.1. Macronutrients, 2.11 proteins. Hundreds of proteins fulfill time-specific roles during development. Yolk is largely hepatic in origin, whereas white is synthesized and secreted in the oviduct after ovulation. Average protein content is 12.5 gram 100 grams whole egg. The yolk plus vitelline membrane contains 15.9 grams per 100 grams, and the white 10.90 grams per 100 grams. Proteomic work has identified nearly 1,000 proteins across the egg, including shell proteins. Yolk architecture: about 68% LDL, 16% HDL, 10% live-tins soluble proteins, 4% phosphitins, distributed between granules, 19 to 23% of dry matter, half of yolk proteins, and plasma, 77-81% of dry matter. The most abundant yolk proteins, apolipoprotein B, apovitelinin-1, vitellogenins, serum albumin, immunoglobulins, ovalbumin, ovotransferrin, make up 0.80% of total yolk proteins. The yolk is enclosed by a 2-layer vitelline membrane that forms an extracellular matrix and prevents yolk leakage into the white. Egg white: a lipid-free gel, 88% water, containing ovomucin fibers, viscosity structure, abundant ovalbumin, 50% of white protein, lysozyme, several protease inhibitors, and peptides. A typical 60 grams egg has 30 milliliters white with 110 milligrams protein milliliters. Toward 150 distinct proteins have been cataloged. The viscosity is primarily due to ovomucin and 4 abundant inhibitors. Ovostatin, ovomucoid, ovoinhibitor, cystatin can delay digestion, especially when whites are eaten raw. Hashashtarbin are 2.1.2 lipids. Total lipids are stable at 8.7 to 11.2 gram 100 grams whole egg and are confined to the yolk. A small share adheres to the vitelline membrane. Yolk lipids are packaged as lipoproteins with triglyceride and cholesterol ester cores and a surface phospholipid cholesterol monolayer studded with apoproteins. Total fat is hard to change. It tracks the yolk-white ratio, but the fatty acid profile responds strongly to diet. Relative amounts favor unsaturation. Unsaturated, MUFA plus PUFA, 5.31 grams versus saturated 2.64 grams per 100 grams whole egg, Table 1. Linoleic acid, 18-2N6, is a key essential fatty acid in yolk. Historical concern centered on cholesterol, about 400 milligrams per 100 grams whole egg, but classic animal data show myristic acid, 14-nero, raises plasma cholesterol, whereas linoleic, 18-2, lowers it. Eggs are very low in 14-nero, 0.24 grams per 100 grams, and much higher in 18-2, 1.38 grams per 100 grams. Consistent with epidemiologic findings that eggs do not elevate CVD risk in healthy people. Hyperresponders, 15 to 25%, should still moderate intake. Selected FA and cholesterol values per 100 grams whole egg, Table 1. SFA 2.64 grams, MUFA 0.66 grams, PUFA 1.65 grams, 18-2N6, 1.38 grams, 18-3N3, 0.061 grams, DHA 0.09 grams, cholesterol 0.398 grams. 2.3. Carbohydrates. Eggs are low carb, 0.7%. Glucose is the dominant free sugar, 0.37 grams per 100 grams, mainly in the white, 0.34 grams per 100 gram white versus 0.18 grams per 100 gram yolk. Trace fructose, lactose, maltose, galactose occur. Many egg proteins are glycoproteins produced with post-translational glycosylations. 2.2. Micronutrients. 2.21. Vitamins and choline. Egg yolk contains all vitamins except vitamin C. Birds synthesize ascorbate from glucose, unlike humans and a few other species. Yolk is rich in A, D, E, K, B2, B5, B6, B9, B12. White provides high B2, B3, B5, plus notable B1, B6, B9, B12. 2 eggs a day supply 10 to 30% of daily vitamin needs. Fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, K in yolk are highly diet-dependent. Eggs are a major choline source, overwhelmingly in the yolk, population 680 milligrams per 100 grams yolk versus 1 milligrams per 100 grams white. A hard-boiled egg is the second highest choline source after beef liver and the top source in the U.S. diet. Choline occurs in water-soluble, free choline, phosphocholine, glycerophosphocholline, and lipid-soluble, phosphatidylcholine, sphingomyelin, forms and supports neurotransmission, brain development, and bone integrity. Representative vitamin contents, milligrams per 100 grams. Table 2. Retinol 160, whole, 371, yolk, 0, white. Vitamin D 2.0, 5.40. Tocopherol 150, I258, K0.3, 0.7, I0, B12 0.89, 1.95.09. and 2.2.2 trace elements. Eggs are rich in phosphorus, calcium, potassium, and contain moderate sodium, 142 milligrams per 100 gram whole egg. All essential trace elements are present: Q, Phe, Mg, Mn, Se, Zn, with the yolk the main source of Fe and Zn. Selenium and iodine can be significantly increased via the hen's diet. Representative mineral values number 100 grams, Table 3. Calcium 56, whole, 129 yolk, 7 white. Iron 1.75 per 2.73, 0.08. Phosphorus 198 through 390 have 15. Potassium 138, 63. Selenium 0.030, 0.056, 0.2D. Sodium 142 char, 48, 166. Zinc 1.29, 2.30, 0.03. HENR 2.3. Anti-nutritional factors. Egg white contains protease inhibitors, ovostatin, ovomucoid, ovoinhibitor, cystatin, that inhibit pepsin, trypsin, and chymotrypsin, potentially delaying digestion, especially with raw egg white. Several ovoinhibitor, ovomucoid cystatin, are disulfide-rich, conferring resistance to gastric proteolysis. Heat treatment partially denatures them and improves access to digestive enzymes. Additionally, avidin, abundant in egg, binds biotin with exceptionally high affinity, which can limit biotin bioavailability when large amounts of raw white are consumed.
3. Egg nutraceuticals. Bioactive potential beyond basic nutrition. All right, let's dig into the bioactive side of eggs, the stuff beyond calories and macros. First up, what we're really talking about: a crowded toolbox of proteins plus lipid and vitamin-linked molecules that don't just nourish, they do things. Purified egg proteins show a wide range of biological activities in vitro, and limited digestion, especially after heat-induced denaturation, can release peptides with targeted functions. That's important because some major proteins, notably ovalbumin and ovomucoid, are only partly digested, which makes it plausible that bioactive fragments form and persist in the gut rather than being fully reduced to free amino acids. Next, antimicrobials. In edible portions, they're concentrated in the egg white and the vitelline membrane. You get direct wall-active hitters, lysozyme and avian betadefensins, that permeabilize bacterial envelopes, and indirect strategists that starve microbes of essentials. Ovotransferrin chelates iron, avidin sequesters biotin, protease inhibitors such as ovoinhibitor and cystatin blunt pathogen proteases. Some molecules in this roster, AVBD11, Ovax, avidin, beta-microseminoprotein-like, aren't encoded in the human genome, hinting at complementary anti-infective potential in the human gut. Let's make that concrete. The cast includes AVD11, avidin, beta-microseminoprotein-like, cystatin, gallin, OVODA1, IgY, lysozyme, OVAL-X, TEMP, ovoglobulin G2, BPIFB2, ovoinhibitor, ovomucin, ovotransferrin, phospheten, pleiotrophins, and VMO1, distributed across egg white, yolk, and the vitelline membrane. On top of the native proteins, hydrolysates expand the range. Peptides derived from lysozyme, ovotransferrin, ovomucin, and cystatin show additional antibacterial activity after partial proteolysis. Now, antioxidants. Chronic oxidative stress in the gut tracks with intestinal disorders, and eggs bring multiple lines of defense: vitamins and carotenoids, trace elements, and several protein systems. Ovotransferrin, native and peptide forms, ovomucoid and its hydrolysates, ovomucin-derived peptides, plus yolk phosphatin all show antioxidant actions in model systems. In vivo support exists too. In a porcine oxidative stress model, egg yolk peptides upregulated glutathione synthesis and antioxidant enzyme activities, pointing to a role for dietary yolk proteins in damping intestinal oxidative stress. Moving on to anti-cancer angles. Data are early but interesting. Egg white lysozyme reduced B16 melanoma metastases after oral dosing in experimental work, mainly via immunopotentiation. Ovomucin beta subunit and its peptides show cytotoxic and immune-activating effects. Autocleaved ovotransferrin inhibited human colon and breast cancer cells in vitro. Short tripeptides from egg proteins have also been reported with anti-cancer potential. This space needs more in vivo confirmation, but the signals justify it. Let's talk immune modulation. Several egg proteins look immunoactive. Lysozyme stands out. In a porcine DSS colitis model, it reduced pro-inflammatory cytokines and boosted anti-inflammatory mediators. Sulfated glycopeptides released from ovomucin, collagen, and yolk membrane stimulate macrophages in vitro. Pleiotrophin, present in egg white, promotes lymphocyte survival and chemotaxis in humans. Whether the egg-derived protein exerts those effects in the intestine is still an open question. Meanwhile, ovotransferrin and vitellogen and hydrolysates show immunomodulatory activity after digestion in cell systems. Finally, blood pressure control. With well over 1 billion people affected by hypertension, ACE inhibitory food peptides matter. Eggs deliver several yolk-derived oligopeptides and ovotransferrin fragments, notably IRWP, IQW, and LKP, that inhibit ACE in vitro, modulate vascular responses, and lower blood pressure after oral dosing in spontaneously hypertensive rats. Before we wrap this section, one big methodological note. Because digestion governs which peptides show up where, dynamic gastric intestinal models are the logical next step. These systems include artificial saliva, realistic pH curves, mechanical forces, continuous gastric emptying, bile salts, and sequential intestinal enzymes, and they can be extended with microbiota components. They've been used widely to study bioaccessibility and food matrix changes, and they're ideal for testing how raw versus cooked egg alters the physiological peptide profile and its health relevance. Number 4. Factors affecting egg quality. First, genetics. Breeding programs prioritize shell strength, stable egg weight, high albumin height, freshness, and practical yolk proportion. Selection shifts the relative shares of yolk, white, and shell and has improved albumin height. Egg white is a naturally hostile medium for bacteria, viscous, progressively alkaline during storage, and packed with antimicrobials, and its antibacterial potential shows moderate heritability. While some proteins vary in abundance across lines or shell colors, the major proteins remain essentially unchanged. Next, diet and rearing. Feed composition, energy density, particle size, and timing tune egg weight and, to a lesser extent, the yolk-white ratio. Hens show a late-day appetite for coarse calcium, storing it for nighttime shell calcification. Higher energy intake and linoleic acid increase egg weight, most at 22 to 32 weeks, and adequate protein, often methionine-limited, pushes weight up as well. By contrast, anti-nutritional factors in plant proteins, protease inhibitors, resistant storage proteins such as convisilin, glycinin, cruciferin can depress digestibility and performance. Then, fatty acids and micronutrients. The yolk fatty acid profile mirrors the diet. Adding fish, chia, flaxseed, olive or soy oils, or microalgae linseed readily boosts unsaturated and N3-PUFA without necessarily changing total fat, which tracks yolk share. Trace elements respond too. Selenium can rise from 5 micrograms per egg to 30 to 40 micrograms per egg, with 0.3 to 0.5 milligrams s-kilogram feed, selenomethionine or SE yeast, covering 50 to 70% of daily human requirements. Iodine is similarly fortifiable. Lipid-soluble vitamins are highly diet-dependent. Vitamin A can increase about 10 times, e.g. 30,000 IU retinol, vitamin D3 about 15 times, e.g. 2,500 15,000 IU, and vitamin E 3 to 20 times, while folate, riboflavin, and bean-2 can more than double. Dietary carotenoids, lutein, xanthophylls, zeaxanthin from corn, lucerne, marigold, paprika, deepen yolk color and may support visual performance and lower AMD risk. Meanwhile, the housing system also nudges composition. Free-range access to grass, insects, and worms can lift tocopherols and lutein relative to cages or organic systems fed the same basal diet, whereas lipid and total sterol contents may not differ. Because environmental microbial exposure is higher, yolk IgY can increase, and the albumin antimicrobial capacity may be subtly modulated, together suggesting a small gain in overall antimicrobial potential. Conventional systems that permit dietary additives often show higher carotenoids and vitamins. After that, consider physiological status. With age, eggs get heavier, the yolk fraction rises, and shell strength and albumin height generally decline. The vitelline membrane weakens, raising the risk of yolk rupture. Reports on age-related shifts in DHA and arachidonic acid are mixed, but late-cycle hens often show physiological and metabolic drift consistent with these quality changes. Health pressures matter too. Salmonella enteritis, mycoplasma, infectious bronchitis virus, and avian influenza reduce performance and degrade quality, e.g., thinner whites, shell defects. The poultry red mite is widespread across systems, causing distress, anemia, lower production, poorer quality, and potentially vectoring salmonella. Resistance, climate warming, and system shifts are making control harder. Coordinated control programs, monitoring, pre-harvest measures, management, sanitation, and egg washing where allowed, have driven downward trends in salmonellosis. In the EU, Egg washing is not permitted due to the risk that cuticle damage increases transshell contamination and moisture loss when drying storage aren't optimal. Next, storage. Eggs are considered fresh up to 28 days post-lay. Over time, water and CO2 diffuse through the shell, the air cell enlarges, albumin height falls, pH rises from 7.8 toward 9.5, and whipping volume increases. The vitelline membrane loosens, the yolk flattens, and two-way exchange of glucose, proteins, vitamins, and trace elements between white and yolk accelerates. Proteins undergo degradation, and the albumin's antibacterial capacity declines. Refrigeration slows all of this. Notably, the antioxidant activity of yolk remained largely unchanged across 6 weeks of retail storage in one study. Finally, heat treatment. Cooking denatures proteins, good for digestibility and for inactivating protease inhibitors and potentially reducing allergenicity, but can reduce some antioxidant capacity, loss of free aromatic amino acids, and some lutein zeaxanthin. Across raw, soft-boiled, and hard-boiled, datasets don't perfectly agree, but a consistent trend is decreases in PUFA, selenium, and vitamin A with hard boiling. A practical compromise is to set the white, safety, inhibitors inactivated while keeping the yolk runny to preserve vitamins, lipids, carotenoids, and bioactives. Think poached or soft-boiled. And to round it out, species differences. Markets are dominated by chicken eggs, but duck, quail, goose, and turkey eggs are also eaten and differ mainly by yolk-white ratios. Estimated energy, kcals per 100 grams, runs chicken 143, quail 158, duck 185, goose 185, turkey 171. Protein hovers near 13% across species, while lipid percentage is higher in duck-goose because yolk proportion is larger. Minerals and vitamins are often higher in duck and goose than chicken, though diet strongly confounds comparisons. Proteomically, some proteins are species-specific, and abundances of ovotransferrin, lysozyme, and gallin can differ. Functionally, chicken egg white often shows the strongest antibacterial capacity against Bacillus subtilis, Staphylococcus aureus, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, and Escherichia coli. Lower ovomucoid in duck, goose, and turkey whites may translate to easier protein digestibility. Why? Conclusion. Egg consumption will likely continue to grow as people reduce meat for health, ethical, and environmental reasons, and look for affordable, nutrient-dense foods. Very low per capita intake in regions such as Central Africa highlights a public health opportunity, provided production scales safely and sustainably. The bioactive landscape of the egg is still undermapped. About 550 distinct proteins have been cataloged in the edible fractions, yet only around 20 have fully characterized physiological roles. Priorities now are to track intact proteins through digestion, map which peptides are released under realistic gastric and intestinal conditions for raw versus cooked eggs, and test their relevance in living organisms across antimicrobial, antioxidant, immunomodulatory, antihypertensive, and anti-cancer outcomes. Dynamic gastrointestinal models that incorporate artificial saliva, physiological pH progressions, gastric mechanics, continuous gastric emptying, bile salts, sequential intestinal enzymes, and representative intestinal microbiota are well suited to answer these questions. Applying these models to differently cooked eggs can reveal which peptides persist, where they act, and what they do. Bottom line, the egg is not merely a convenient protein source. It is a delivery system for bioactive molecules with nutritional, functional, and potentially therapeutic value. The more rigorously we profile digestion-derived peptides and validate their actions in living organisms, the more golden this food becomes. Author roles and disclosures. Sophie Réhault-Godbert supervised the work and drafted the manuscript. Nicolas Guyot authored the antimicrobial sections. Yves wrote the nutritional value sections. All authors reviewed and edited the article. The authors reported no external funding and no conflicts of interest.